Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our webinar is brought to you by Baxter Media, and this is part 4 of our live interview series, AI Insights, Conversations with the Experts. Today, we are really excited to have a discussion between Bob Mowat, who is the Executive Editor of Canadian Travel Press, and Robin Lawther, who is the Vice President of Expedia TAAP. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Bob. Take it away.
Welcome, everyone, to AI Insights, Conversation with the Experts. In the 4th episode of our series on AI, I'll be chatting with Robin Lawther, Vice President of Expedia TAAP, as Eilish has already told you. Robin has a proven track record of leading teams across strategy, operations, and commercial domains. His extensive experience as a management consultant in the travel industry and backed by over 8 years in various B2B leadership roles at Expedia Group, he leverages his deep understanding of the retail travel industry and applies his expertise to drive strategic initiatives and growth for Expedia TAAP. As a recognized subject matter expert, Robin remains at the forefront, shaping the vision for TAAP and consistently prioritizes travel advisors to ensure the business can deliver world-class experiences to the travelers they serve. Welcome, Robin. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me, Bob. That was quite the introduction.
Yes. Well, you've done a lot of things, so that's a good thing. Listen, you recently wrote about how technology supporting travel agents has evolved over the last few years. I thought it might be a good place to start today's conversation. Before we get to artificial intelligence or Gen AI, can you talk about how technology has evolved and what kind of benefits it has had for the travel agency community?
Yeah, I mean, I think as a starting point, I think the call right now is kind of a good example of how technology has evolved. 10, 15 years ago, we wouldn't have been doing this. But right now, I'm sitting in Amsterdam talking to a community of people spread across Canada and perhaps further afield. And I think it's just symbolic of how things have moved over the last 10, 15, 20 years. If you kind of take that for travel advisors and really what that means, taking a step back, a long time ago, this was a completely offline world. And sometimes we still refer to this as kind of the offline travel industry. But honestly, that is not the case anymore. We're in a world right now where this is very much still online, just slightly different flavors versus where we were in the past and where we've come to now. And if we take where Expedia is and where TAAP is in that journey, we realized 15 years ago that there was great appetite for travel advisors to access what Expedia was doing on the consumer side of the business. And at that point, we created what we call Expedia TAAP. At that point, it was a very basic booking platform, and it's been great to see the evolution of that over time into what TAAP is today. However, what we've also recognized is what got us to here doesn't necessarily get us to where we want to go in future. And around 18 months or so ago, we put pretty big investment behind TAAP to recognize that if we want to keep building for the future, building technology to really empower travel agents and advisors, we needed to do more, and we needed to build more skills, capabilities, and options for advisors whenever they use our platform. And we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, as we go through the interview today.
So it's fair to say technology is revolutionizing the experience for both the travel agent and their travelers. And maybe you could talk about how that experience is being revolutionized, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely is revolutionizing it. I think there's also, and I wouldn't say otherwise, a long way still to go in that journey. And I think a lot more that we can still do, both for the advisor community and also for the travelers that they are serving. Right. As I kind of alluded to, things have progressed a long way already. There are a huge amount of capabilities that are out there. There are a lot of capabilities that we provide to advisors, and there's lots of other tools and technologies that advisors use around the world to manage their interactions between them and their customers. Going forward, and well, before I get into the world of AI, I think just if we look at where we are right now, on the advisor side, there's a plethora of tools that people are using. Some would contend there's potentially too many tools that people are using. And I think as we look at technology, there's lots that travel advisors are trying to do right now to streamline that, to make their operations more efficient and more effective and better for the end travelers as well. Then if we take the traveler side, we've moved from a world where a lot of things were kind of offline or paper-based. There's now a lot more that is made available to travelers or customers directly online. But I do think there's a lot more that can be done in that space as well to make that end traveler experience even better from a kind of trip planning perspective, but also from an in-trip experience as well.
So following up a bit, I wanted to ask you about the kind of technologies that Expedia TAAP has put in place and is putting in place to enhance the travel agent experience and to help them better serve their customers, give those customers what they want.
Yeah. And as I think of the world of travel advisors, one of the things that I think is most critical to everybody, based on everything we always hear, is around support and how a travel advisor can help best serve their customer, either upfront in planning and booking the trip, or indeed when things can and unfortunately do go wrong in the world of travel. One of the things that we've done a lot over the last few years is look at how do we further build out that support experience for travel advisors and for their customers. One of the things that we launched on our platform a number of years ago is what we called our virtual agent. Now, people might look at these and say, oh, but is that just a chatbot? But I'd say it's actually a lot more than that. We firstly developed this to try and help people get to answers faster. The last thing we really want to do is have someone pick up the phone to us and spend 10 or 15 minutes speaking to someone to work through a problem. If maybe that just requires a 10-second answer that could be answered by our virtual agent online around basic queries. However, what we see over time, the more usage we have on the virtual agent, the more queries we see coming in through that, the smarter that becomes. And we recognize we're always getting asked questions about these 5 topics. What do we need to do to solve those and put travel advisors in a better place to get faster answers for their customers? And then secondly, and linked to that, what we then did is the virtual agent is one piece. How do you get quick automated answers to basic problems? We also recognize that there's going to be things that the computer can't automatically solve right now. And thankfully, we have humans in place to jump in and sort that out. And so what we have on the virtual agent is the opportunity to live chat with an advisor 24 hours a day if somebody needs extra help and support.
Yeah.
And it's been interesting to see that channel grow over time, because typically we thought, great, people love picking up the phone to talk to us. But what we really see is people also want to just chat live. It means they can multitask, they can get on with something else while they're waiting for us to investigate and get back to them. And we see very high satisfaction and adoption rates of that tool. I think it's just a good indication of one thing that we've done to try and help empower advisors more and just make their lives of working with us a bit easier than they were in the past.
Now we're here today to talk about artificial intelligence. And I'm wondering what you see the role that AI can play for the travel agency community. Can you sort of set the scene for the audience today?
Yeah, I think there's a lot that AI has the potential to do in this space. And as I think about the world of travel advisors, and I think about the world of TAAP, to me, I kind of break it down into 3 different areas. So you've got planning, you've got booking, and you've got support. And if I think about those 3 different areas, I think across all of those, AI can play a role. Firstly, you've got the planning aspect, and this is probably where AI has had the most talk in this space. So firstly, you've got around kind of trip creation. A customer comes in, where they want to go, how can you help put together the perfect trip for them? Now here, I think there's possibly a bit of a conflict as well. I would hypothesize that if it's a travel advisor based in Vancouver, a customer comes in and calls them up and they want to go to New York for 5 nights, I doubt they really need AI to help them plan that trip. It's probably their bread and butter. They know the flight options they'd recommend. They know the hotels they'd recommend. AI is probably not going to revolutionize that. However, if a customer comes the next day and says, I want to go to Cambodia for 2 weeks, an advisor in Vancouver may not have sold a trip to Cambodia before. Of course, there's lots of different ways they can start to piece together that trip. But I think that's one of the areas where perhaps AI will help fast track that and help guide what are the options, what are the different things, what's kind of a grouping of like-minded people that have done this before, what worked best for them. Okay. And then secondly, in that planning stage, there's everything related to kind of pricing, value for money, and options for customers. And again, I think there's a lot that will happen in the world of AI to help optimize that space around predicting prices, predicting times of travel, possibly predicting alternative options if the hotel that they recommend is perhaps out of price or is sold out for that particular date. So that's kind of part 1. Then we get to part 2 is actually booking the trip itself. Now, This is where there's a lot of tools out there, including TAAP, I'm happy to say, which is pretty simple and effective for booking tools, for booking trips. But after that comes, like, how do you piece together the itinerary? There's still a lot of copy and paste today from different sources. People spend time formatting documents. I think even on some of those basic things, we're already seeing some AI applications that help piece together that whole trip, put together a concise itinerary, put some nice graphics and illustrations around it, and package together something super simple that a travel advisor can immediately give to their customers. And then the kind of other big piece of this, and I mentioned it already, is around support. We've already done a lot of things in this powered by AI to help enhance the support experience. But this is one where I'm personally very excited and optimistic about what can be done in future to really help streamline that support experience further. I think a lot of people today spend way more time on support than they'd like. Unfortunately, the world of travel is complex. There will always be things that go wrong. But I also think this is an area where AI will really be able to help in the future and just help streamline and hopefully eliminate a lot of those pain points and frictions that we have today.
I wanted to also ask you about Expedia TAAP's vision for AI or Gen AI. I think you've covered some of that in your last answer. And I guess, where do you see it going in terms of where it'll be taking the agents and their clients, going forward?
It's a great question. So firstly, if we take AI in general, AI is not new, and AI for Expedia is something that has always been, or has been there for a long time, and has really been incorporated into a lot of what we do on a day-to-day basis. So if somebody searches today on Expedia for a particular destination, there's AI at play already. There's AI in recommending which hotels we put at the top of that list, which hotels we think are most likely to sell for any given search. Similarly, we use AI technologies to help our hotel partners as well, help guide them on maybe you should run a promotion at this time, or maybe you should run some sort of discount to try and capture certain groups of demand. And those are things that we've done for a while. However, the big question right now is, what about generative AI? And I think looking back, I was just checking for this call, it was, I think, November 2022 when ChatGPT launched. And all of a sudden, everyone is now talking about the world of AI, and particularly the world of generative AI. Since that happened, that's been, I'd say, forefront of mind for a lot of people at Expedia Group on what are we going to do. We've been running some tests on our consumer side, on our consumer app, particularly related to trip planning, to understand how do consumers interact with this, where do we see the benefits of it, but also where do we see challenges and other things we have to be mindful of. I'd say right now, and it links back to that former question on TAAP, I think there are a lot of potential use cases for generative AI in this world. What we're trying to do right now is figure out where can we really add value and where can we take to market something that's good and is really going to be used by people, rather than immediately saying we just need to get something up on the TAAP site right now to kind of tick the generative AI box, but maybe we only have 5% of users actually using it. And so we're really kind of going through that period right now to see where this will go. And also, I'll be honest, I think a lot of companies are in the same space. Yeah. We've seen so much excitement since ChatGPT came out. I mean, I personally think it's great, but I think a lot of people are figuring out how do we truly embed this in everything that we're doing, rather than some of the things that, yes, it's interesting to play around with right now, but we really need to figure out where is this going to be a game changer and where do we really put a lot of investment and energy behind to kind of truly revolutionize the experience.
Yeah. You've talked a little bit about virtual agent, and I wondered if maybe you can talk a bit about, are there things that retailers can expect from virtual agent going forward? Is there something in the pipeline that you can share with us, or should I ask another question?
Yeah, I mean, I've talked a little bit about it, and I think it's something at Expedia we've been very pleased with, and we've seen great results from it so far. As I mentioned, ultimately what we're trying to do with this is make the lives of people using our platform easier and get faster answers to really any queries that might happen with regards to how to use the platform or anything related to booking. over time, that keeps evolving. And I'd say it's more of it's a natural evolution of things rather than, okay, in 2 months' time, we launch this thing and this kind of leads to a massive step change. Over time, we keep adding more skills and capabilities to that so that it just enables better and faster self-service. And as I mentioned, the more people that use it, the bigger data set we build up of these are the common queries we have, these are the common problems that advisors have, and then we look at those and say, okay, well, how do we actually build something so that we can solve that in an automated way versus someone having to pick up the phone and sit while we actually work through it with a hotel or with an airline.
Now, going back to an article you did recently, you suggested that the future of incorporating Gen AI into the travel agent workflow is not that far away. Can you talk about how you see Gen AI being incorporated into that workflow, and when do you see this happening? Maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I've touched on a couple of points related to this already. I'd say right now, how far away is it?
Yeah.
Is it 12 months? Is it 18 months? I think we're going to start to see more and more aspects of this coming through. But I do think it will be a kind of slow and steady evolution rather than we wake up one day and there's a radically different experience out there which suddenly everybody adapts to. Everything we've seen in the travel space shows that it's complicated. There's a lot of nuance, there's a lot of expertise that's required. I don't think we can suddenly short circuit that and solve all problems in one go. That said, we're investing a lot of time and energy behind it right now. There's lots of aspects of it which I talked about already, particularly related to trip planning and also related to support, which we're just trying to work through and figure out how do we bring this to people in the most meaningful way that will lead to kind of great experiences and great adoption of this, as I said, rather than just kind of trying to rush and get something out there. So I'd say, I don't have an immediate answer as to say on this date, we're going to launch feature X. But I think over the next 12 to 18 months, you'll start to see more coming from us and kind of a very clear direction of where we're going and really where we want to invest behind to kind of be as helpful as we can be to the advisors that we're trying to empower.
Right. What about some of the opportunities that AI offers advisors? I know you talked about some of those, but I'd also wonder if there are some dangers or challenges that AI brings with it for the agency community.
Yeah, so I think in terms of opportunities, I talked about that already, and I'm very optimistic about the medium to longer term outcomes that we can get from it.
Yeah.
Of course, it does create a multitude of challenges as well. And I think since ChatGPT has launched, we've seen some of this being on display in quite a public way. I think I'll talk about this in kind of two ways. The first is I'd say kind of the general risks of AI. And then I think, what are the risks of AI specifically to travel advisors? So first on the general risks of AI, and this is where there's been a lot of publicity around some of this. So firstly, there's a question of bias. Gen AI is trained on models of existing information. If in that existing information, there is some bias in that might lead to biased outcomes. Perhaps we're biased in our recommendations of here's a destination that perhaps we shouldn't be recommending. Perhaps there's something in the underlying data that's perhaps skewing that recommendation. There's also a risk of misinformation or just getting it wrong. All of a sudden, we're churning out these recommendations. We're saying, great, this is where you should go on your 2-week holiday, or this is the policy of an airline or a hotel. And that could actually be wrong. And we've seen, I think, particularly in Canada, I think actually a very high profile example of that with Air Canada a couple of months ago, where there was some guidance provided that wasn't correct. And that then kind of caused a whole flurry of who was at fault. Was it the chatbot or was it the airline? And so I think there's going to be lots of these things that have to be worked through to really make sure, if we increasingly rely on Gen AI, that there are super robust processes in place behind it to make sure there's no bias and to make sure that it is absolutely accurate and absolutely can be relied on. Then, of course, there's the question about what does this actually mean for the world of travel advisors? And I've seen some headlines, much as we've seen in the past, related to the world of travel advisors saying, does Gen AI mean the end of travel advisors? Is there a tool out there you put in, I want to go to Cambodia for 2 weeks. The tool tells you everything you need for that trip, everything you should book, everything should be booked, and a human doesn't need to be involved. I honestly just don't believe that to be the case. And I think we've seen enough examples of that right now in the travel industry to say, there is always going to be a role for travel advisors out there. People are not just coming to travel advisors for their advice, that's part of it, but people like having a real life human that they can interact with, that they can talk to, that they can rely on for guidance, help and support, and ultimately that they know if there's something wrong, there's someone I can pick up the phone to and is going to help me with that. And as kind of people talk about, well, could Gen AI disrupt that? Maybe, but I also think back to during the deepest, darkest days of the COVID crisis and thinking, okay, how's the travel advisor community going to come out of this? Brick and mortar stores have closed down. Almost everything seemed to be shifting to online. But we came through COVID, thankfully. And actually, we've seen just incredible demand for travel advisors coming out of that. The value that people place on having someone that they can speak to, someone they can help and support them through what is still a very complex purchase journey for travel and a very complex fulfillment journey for travel, I think has almost been exacerbated by COVID and really shown the role for advisors in that.
Right.
So if I put all that together, all the things I've talked about, I think it's going to create a lot of opportunity for advisors and hopefully empower them. Right now, I don't view it as something that's an inherent risk. And I also think for people that are savvy, I think there's also opportunities where it can really help advisors. One of the big things we've seen really since COVID is people have been struggling that are running travel agencies to recruit the number of people that they need. And I've spoken to many people from Canada through to Australia saying, we're actually in a great position right now. We have more work than we can handle. We're in a fortunate position of being able to turn away clients and be very picky about who we work with. Actually, I think there's good opportunities from generative AI and AI in general. If that can help streamline some of that work, if that can take away some of the kind of painful, monotonous processes associated with the job, that frees up more time for serving clients. And maybe you can go from working from 10 clients a week to working from 15 clients a week, because it can just make that purchasing journey and process simpler than we have right now.
I understand that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, that TAAP is exploring how Expedia's ChatGPT-powered trip planner could work for agents on TAAP. Is there any chance you can talk a little bit about that, or is that a bit premature?
No, yeah, absolutely happy to talk about it. And that was one of the things that we were very proud of at Expedia, was getting something out there, really as one of the first and kind of foremost people in the travel industry to do that, after we kind of saw this explosion of interest around ChatGPT.
Right.
It's being tested on the consumer side right now. There's some testing going on in the app. What we're trying to do right now is understand how are consumers interacting with that? Where is it adding value to consumers? Where are there potential problems that it's generating as well? Once we get to kind of a very firm answer on that, then we absolutely want to start testing that on TAAP as well, to see really where and how can that help advisors. There's for sure going to be big differences, I also think, in a general consumer going on to Expedia.com or one of our other points of sale versus an advisor. And so also I think we need to put it out there in a way where we are very clear that this is a test. We want to get feedback. We want to understand where and how this can add value. And then from there, really look at how do we build that into our workflows. What we've put out right now is quite basic for testing. But as we work through this in future, I think ultimately will start to become a lot more integrated into the TAAP purchasing journey to help recommend hotels, to help recommend add-ons or other things an advisor might want to add onto a trip. So I'd say kind of bear with us on that. It's top of mind right now as to how do we get that out and how do we test that.
Well, it'll be like Christmas. We'll have something to unwrap, won't we?
Exactly. It's always nice to have something new.
I've been quoting you a lot today, but you wrote in a recent article that, quote, as the evolution of travel continues, anticipate a wave of innovative products designed to empower agents, reinforcing their pivotal role in shaping seamless and extraordinary travel experiences for modern travelers. Can you talk about maybe some of the innovative products that you're envisioning?
Yeah, I think there's a couple of pieces. I'll talk about this from a TAAP perspective, and then I'll talk about it from a broader perspective. From a TAAP perspective, as I mentioned at the start, around 18 months ago, we really started investing a lot more in the TAAP program, really recognizing that there is a very buoyant and strong market out there and strong demand for our product, but we wanted to keep building it for the future. We have a lot of things that are coming live this year. Some people may be aware that we are building and testing a new shopping experience for TAAP that is much more tailored and created to travel advisors and their specific needs. That will help with things like quotations, building itineraries, streamlining the purchase journey, getting more relevant information in front of advisors as quickly as we can. There's a lot that we're doing from a payments perspective as well. We launched a capability called deferred payments. We have later this year a service fee capability coming up to help advisors earn even more whenever they book on TAAP. And we've got some exciting news coming up in the current weeks around a loyalty scheme. And I think the many people on this call today that are based in Canada will be happy to hear that news in the coming weeks. And really, that's just the start of where we want to take TAAP. So a lot of things coming this year, but really that's building a lot of foundational capabilities that we will keep building on for the future. So that's what we're doing on the TAAP side. And as I said, I think there's a lot. I'm excited to see how does the industry evolve more broadly, and also what more can we do from an Expedia TAAP standpoint to support advisors and their travelers as well. One of the things I'm curious about myself, and I don't think there's a perfect answer for right now, is that in-trip experience. And how do we better help advisors and indeed help their travelers once the traveler's actually left their home and is in trip, with better information around travel issues, check-in, check-out, and ultimately empowering the advisor to be more connected to their traveler once they're actually in that journey.
Well, I'm coming up to my last question. Eilish, do you have any questions from the audience?
Not at this time, so feel free to wrap up with your last question there, Bob.
I think my last question is a simple one. Is there something that I haven't asked you that I should have asked you? Shame on me if I didn't ask you.
It's the sort of question I'll reflect on in 2 minutes and think, oh, I really should have said this to Bob, or I wish you'd asked me that.
Call me, right? Call me.
Yeah, no, I think you've touched on the main pieces. I mean, in kind of short summary, I think there's hopefully a whole world of opportunity that this is going to open up. As I said a few times, I think while there's been a lot of media excitement around this, I think some of it is still in early stages. And I've said a few times, we really want to make sure we get it right. And when we put something out there, it is great and can be relied on. I think kind of what gives me confidence and why I'm excited in running the TAAP business is I'm running the TAAP business, but we're part of a much bigger Expedia group overall. And this is really of critical importance for us to get right. We're putting a huge amount of time and energy behind it. And I'm very confident over the coming months and years that we'll start seeing the benefits of that and be in a position to very quickly flow the benefits of that through to our thousands of advisors across Canada that use the TAAP platform on a daily basis.
Thank you, Rob. Much appreciated. And I'm always happy to hear what's going on at Expedia TAAP or Expedia Group. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. And thank you to all of our, I'm sure, many TAAP partners that have joined on the call today as well.
You were getting some emoji responses there, so I think the audience really enjoyed what you had to say. So thank you so much for being here, Robin, and for being here, Bob, as well. We'll wrap up. I just wanted to say that, as I mentioned, we are recording. So everyone who's here today and everyone who registered, you'll receive in your email box a link to the recording so you can revisit the discussion. As well, our upcoming webcasts. Our next one is on May 23rd with Rail Bookers. So be sure to register for that on travelpress.com under the Travel Webcast tab. And you can find Baxter Media and Canadian Travel Press on social media. We're on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. So with that, we'll wrap up. And thanks everyone for joining. Thanks again to Robin and Bob. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Take
Bye.
care.